The sun dipped behind the jagged hills of Dust Creek, staining the sky with an orange glow that looked almost peaceful. Peaceful enough to hide the screams echoing from the Porter farmhouse. Inside, Lila Porter shielded her youngest daughter with trembling arms, while her husband, Hank, towered above her in a drunken rage. Hank was a man raised on the belief that women were born to serve, and daughters were curses dropped from the heavens to mock him. Lila had given birth to 3 girls, Grace, Emma, and Tiny Rose, and each arrival had buried her deeper into Hank's resentment. The townsfolk always heard the chaos, but they pretended not to. People in Dust Creek liked their comfort too much to meddle in other people's misery. That evening, Lila's cheek already bruised. Hank shoved her against the wooden cabinet so hard the dishes inside rattled. 3 girls! He yelled, spit flying from his mouth. 3 useless girls. I needed a son, Lila, a son. Lila didn't speak. She had learned years ago that words only fueled him more. Instead, she pressed her lips into a thin line, holding back her tears as her little girls whimpered behind her. Hank stormed outside, muttering curses, leaving the house shaking in his wake. Lila knew that as long as she stayed here, her daughters would grow up afraid, shrinking themselves into silence the same way she had. She wiped her cheek, ignoring the sting, and whispered, "Girls, get your shoes on, quickly." The night was cold, the air carrying hints of sagebrush and dust as Lila pushed her daughters along the gravel road. She didn't have a destination, she just knew that staying meant breaking, and she refused to break. Not anymore. She held Grace's hand tightly and carried Rose on her hip. The moon guided them as though heaven itself felt pity. But halfway down the long road, the rumble of an engine froze her in place. Hank's old truck skidded to a halt in front of them. He jumped out, rage burning in his eyes. "Where do you think you're going?" He snarled. Lila whispered, "Run!" And the girls darted toward the fields as she spread her arms, trying to block Hank's path. But he grabbed her hair, yanking her hard, causing her knees to slam into the dirt. "You think you can make a fool out of me?" he shouted, kicking her in the ribs. But then another sound, hooves thundering on hard earth, cut through the moment. A stallion whinnied sharply, and both Hank and Lila turned. A huge chestnut horse galloped toward them, guided by a tall man whose silhouette glowed under the moonlight. It was Elias Reed, the quiet, lonely rancher who lived miles away from town. The man folks whispered about because he never married, never smiled, never asked for company. But tonight, he reined in his horse right between Hank and Lila like an avenging spirit. Elias dismounted, his boots crunching the gravel. "That's enough," he said, voice calm but edged with steel. Hank laughed bitterly. "This ain't your business, Reed." Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he kneeled beside Lila, gently lifting her chin to inspect the swelling bruise.
"She bleeding?"
he muttered to himself. Then he stood, eyes darkening. "Walk away, Hank." Hank puffed his chest. "You gonna stop me?" Elias stepped closer, close enough that Hank's bravado wavered. Everyone in Dust Creek knew Elias Reed didn't make threats. He acted. Quiet men were like that. When Lila saw Hank hesitate, she whispered, "Please, just let us go." Hank spat on the ground. "Take her then. Good luck raising 3 worthless." Before he could finish, Elias's fist connected with his jaw, knocking him flat onto his back. Hank scrambled to his feet and fled to his truck, screaming curses as he sped away. Silence washed over the road, broken only by Lila's soft sobs. Elias knelt again. "You and the girls safe?" She nodded weakly. Grace, Emma, and Rose peeked from behind a bush, eyes wide. Elias glanced at them, then at Lila, then back at the road Hank disappeared down. Then he said the words that would change her life forever, words firm, certain and protective in a way she hadn't heard in years. "You're coming with me." He didn't ask. He didn't hesitate. He simply extended his hand, gentle, steady, warm. Lila stared at it, unsure whether to trust a stranger, especially a man. But when she looked into Elias's eyes, there was no anger, no judgment, only sincerity. She took his hand. Elias lifted her onto the horse, then helped the girls climb up behind her. "Hold tight," he said, mounting behind them and guiding the horse toward his ranch miles away. The wind brushed against Lila's face as they rode. For the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar: hope. Elias rode with purpose, his jaw tight, as though he had already vowed silently to protect them. At the ranch, he set up beds for the girls, made Lila tea, and bandaged her wounds with hands far gentler than she expected. She watched him quietly, wondering why a man who barely spoke to anyone would choose to help a broken woman and her 3 daughters. But she didn't know yet. Elias Reed had lived alone, not because he wanted to, but because he once lost everyone he loved. And seeing Lila fight for her daughters reminded him of a strength he thought the world had forgotten. As the fire crackled, Lila looked at the sleeping girls and whispered to herself, maybe this is the beginning of something better. Elias, from across the room, answered softly, it will be. That night, beneath the quiet roof of a lonely rancher, a wounded mother and 3 frightened girls slept, safely for the first time in years, unaware that danger, redemption, love, and justice were all racing toward them at dawn. The morning sun drew pale gold lines across the wooden floor of Elias Reed's kitchen. Lila blinked awake slowly, unsure for a moment where she was. Then she saw Grace curled beside her, Rose drooling on her arm, and Emma sitting upright, staring out the window at the rancher feeding his horses. Wave of relief washed over Lila, so powerful it nearly stole her breath. They were safe. Elias returned inside with his sleeves rolled up, shirt clinging to his broad shoulders from the morning work. Lila stiffened. She wasn't used to a man moving around her without raising his voice. But Elias simply nodded and pointed to the pot on the stove. Made breakfast. You and the girls should eat. His tone wasn't demanding, it was an invitation. The girls approached the table timidly, staring at the warm biscuits and eggs like they were treasures. Lila helped them sit, her hands still shaky. Elias set plates in front of them gently, as if he were afraid of frightening them. Eat as much as you want, he added, stepping aside to give them space. Grace took the first bite, then her face lit up. Mama, it's good, she whispered. Emma nodded eagerly, and even little Rose tried to stuff biscuit crumbs into her mouth. Lila felt her chest tighten. Her daughters were smiling, really smiling,